You're all nice and quiet. We'll make a start. We'll have Becky Chilcott start things off. She'll formally introduce the process to you. She's the Australiasian chair, still the chair? Coordinator. So it's a global society. It's been around for many years, and Becky is obviously here to formally invite you to participate, and then we'll have Tina talk to you afterwards about her experience as a student. So thanks for your attendance. Take some notes too. Thanks, Becky.
Hello. Thanks for the introduction, Brendan. Well, I was sitting exactly where you're sitting now 20 odd years ago. So I know how you feel. I don't want to. So what I want to do is take a photo of you all before you actually get bogged down in all the because I don't want to take one after because, yeah. Okay. Where is it? I think I'll have to get over here. Okay, so everyone smile. Great, thank you. That might go on the website. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit about what ISTD is about before we get into the projects. So this is, we're working sort of on a rebranding at the moment. So ISTD professionally endorses typographic quality throughout and supports its community, and also allows its members to sort of confidently stand apart. So there are lots of big long mission statements about quality of typography, typographic standards, etc. But really, it was founded by 6 people over 70 years ago, and it's the idea of bringing people together who have a love of the printed word. So Vincent Steer, our ISTD founder, that was his sort of summation of what ISTD, how it started and sort of how it sort of continues. So this is the 40th year of the ISTD student assessment, which is probably one of our biggest activities. So it's quite exciting this year because it is our 40th birthday. And just to point out that this isn't a competition, okay? So anyone who participates in these briefs, I think will get a really great project at the end of it. Pass, you know, whether you pass or you don't pass, whether you're invited to become a member or not. So I think it's the briefs are really valuable, and the whole process going through. It's also not just about typography. It's holistic. So I think, you know, you've already probably Mark's already told you that you need to keep a workbook and you need to think about strategies and things like that. But I'll go through all that now. So it started off in the UK, in London, and then with various people taking it to other regions, it went to Ireland, to the Middle East, to South Africa, and last Australasia, and looking at setting one up in the States quite shortly. So this is our 7th this year, and I think it's the 7th year or the 6th year that TAFE students have been participating, and we're getting really good results. So why enter ISTD? So really, as I said, it is one of the most thought-provoking, and it will really, really push you into doing something you may not have been thinking about doing before. It's also a fantastic portfolio piece. I think I don't know if you guys, if you come to the workshops, you might get to meet Ewan Black, but he actually got a job in New York through his ISTD folio piece. Also, you become part of an international society, so if you do want to go somewhere to work, there's always the opportunity of networking. Okay, so we do have a members website. And of course, the big one is that it's sort of like an extra qualification. You can put MISTD after your name. So this is Mick Barley-Stringer. He was here about 6-7 years ago, and he now works for a company called Juicebox. But this is what he said about ISTD, about how working on it really changed his view on typography, and taught him how to really sort of respect and love the practice. This is Andrew Robertson's project. Now this was several years ago, and he was studying at Swinburne University in Melbourne. And this project also took out the top award at their Create Awards. which is a big awards, I think it's organised over East. But yeah, his student, he was against other practitioners, studios, and he won the top award for his project. So that's just another reason why it really does sort of push you to pursue sort of excellence in yourself. So, okay, going on to the nitty-gritty about the marks and what the percentages are. So you have to get 60% to be able to actually pass, and once you pass, you're invited to become a member of ISTD. 70 to 79 gives you a merit, and then 80 to 100 gives you a commendation. Now, I just want to point out that before I start showing you the London projects, even a pass is really, really good, okay? So, yeah, don't be sort of too overwhelmed by all the amazing work. So you'll recognise a few faces here. This was our assessment last year at Monash University in Melbourne. And this is what happens, okay? So this is what happens when you have your project sitting on a table, and it'll be assessed by a practitioner. Here we've got Stephen Banham, and here we've got Nikki from UTS in Sydney. So we'll have an educator and a practitioner sitting together, and they will take half an hour to look through your project quite thoroughly, okay? And they'll be able to then write a report. Okay, so I think you guys have already started, haven't you? So you've sort of read the briefs, I guess, but just wanted to sort of clarify about typographic interpretation. This is a major part of the project. So when we say typographic interpretation, it also means the creative thinking behind the project, okay? So it doesn't just mean the little details. It's the big picture typography, it's the big picture concept, but it's also all those details, those typographic details, like really clear hierarchy of information, attention to detail, and that sort of typographic crafting, which we can help you with in workshops, and obviously your lecturers will help you with. Also, great care with legibility. And is the format appropriate? Because you'll be choosing your target audience in, I think, all of the briefs. So you've got to think, well, is it appropriate for the target audience? So research and development. So you'll be asked to do primary and secondary research. So we've seen some students in the past really go to lengths of this, but it's really about sort of understanding and exploring the subject that you've chosen. Now, before we expect to see a range of ideas before you jump into the first one, okay? And it's always sometimes, they talk about happy accidents when you're working through a project and you might be going in one direction and then suddenly you're driven by your research to go in another direction. So yeah, we need to have, in that workbook, we need to have evidence of your design process and how you think. So this can be done in a number of different ways, and I think you probably would have been shown some different workbooks, but quite a lot of the unis, they're all very neat and they're not nice and bound, but we've got like these sketchbooks, where you sort of stick bits and pieces into an A3 sketchbook. So really, it's up to you what sort of format you sort of like. So just also a note to credit all your biographic sort of resources, okay, and images, etc. There we'll need to have a bibliography in the back. Specifications. So we're the only assessment that actually asks for specifications, and this is it's sort of a discipline. It's a typographic discipline, and it also means that if you're working in a studio and you sort of set everything out correctly, then anyone else can take over the job. Okay, so it's sort of leaving your work in a really sort of understandable state. So that includes grids. So that'll be a fully marked up grid with all the columns and margins, etc. And your typography, so your style sheets, and also the paper stock that you use, and the tactile nature of your piece. Presentation. So presentation is important, and yes, it's not a substitute for a weak idea, but these days when presentation can be really high, I would recommend that you sort of push it. And I think Tina's going to mention this, but leave enough time to actually put everything together. And that piece you saw just a while back of Andrew Robertson's, everything is the same, and everything is sort of, he's got this sort of brand happening throughout all his documentation, or through, with whether it be his strategy document or his research and development book. So everything's got the same look, okay? So you guys have chosen, or you're in the process of choosing your briefs. Anyone thinking about Design Museum? The Design Museum was founded by Sir Terence Conran in 1989 as a charity, and at the moment it's based on the banks of the Thames, but it's getting a new home in 2017 in Kensington, in the Museum District in London. So it's going to be a much, much bigger space. So yeah, they're looking at a rebrand for it, obviously.
And Becky, a couple of people have explored the Design Museum.
Okay,
I
great.
think that they're probably just too shy.
Okay. So this will include print, environmental, and probably digital as well. I can show you some. I'll show you some examples in a minute. So yeah, be ambitious with your thinking, and just sort of be really creative and push the boundaries. So this one is one by Thomas Skinner of Portsmouth University, and this got a merit. It's very hard to get a commendation, a really, really high mark in branding, and the branding ones are actually quite difficult because you do need to have all the elements there and the really big branding guidelines, etc. But this one got a really good mark, and it's a really, really nice sort of well-developed logotype there, just with that sort of gentle angle. So that's the logo itself. And then this is an example of a poster. So this is how the posters will work. So you always have this angle happening. And we've got another one. So there'll be lots of studio tours. It's going to be sort of much more than a museum. Tickets. So everything is designed with this very strict, very disciplined sort of look to it. But it's also bright and sort of really appealing, so it appeals to us designers. So in essence, really, if you're doing this project, you're designing for yourself, if you like, and your peers. Here we've got some wayfinding. So again, using that angle element. And then even this is, I just wanted to show you this page, I put that in because I really liked it, because we're using this angle even as part of the grid. And just chopping off those zeros. It's just a really nice little feature. So yeah, attention to detail, in this project, I think. And then, even down to the angle here of describing the typography. And then you've got the specifications. So I'm just showing you a small section here of the corporate guidelines, but they're quite involved. This is another one, so this is a pass. So this one has developed an app as well as all the other branding elements. This is Sam Pittman from the University of Bournemouth. Some really lovely ideas for some seating there. And then this is how posters would work. So there's this sort of network sort of system happening, which hopefully I can show you animate in a little while. And then we've got the website. Let's just see if this works. Full screen.
Chanel or
Old It's a PC, oh my god.
That's what you pay for it.
Sorry?
Yeah, what you pay for.
Controls, right?
Okay. Okay, the next one, milestone. So this one was a really popular one in London. You know, and we're turning 40. It's the ISTD Student Assessment Scheme, so it's a big milestone for us. So choose a person or a subject that has existed for quite a long time. So obviously it's going to have to be something that's been around and documented well, so that you can have a good body of research to add richness to your content. And be inventive again. You know, we're always asking you to be inventive and be creative in your final solutions. So again, with most of these, obviously the branding's a bit different, but most of these you can have a sort of digital outcome or publication outcome. It's really up to you. Okay, so the first one here. Now this one is, I've just got to get my notes. This one is really interesting because it's Mark Longworth, and this one is taken from the last expedition of Arctic explorer Robert F. Scott, and apparently this notebook is found encased in ice, and now it's at the British Museum. But unfortunately it wasn't a successful expedition, so it was a famous expedition where everyone died, which as they did in those days, unfortunately, being explorers and all. So it's quite quiet and gentle. Obviously, and you've got this sort of quite limited colour palette. I'd also, when you're looking through these images, think about how you're going to present your own work. Okay, where do you want to wear white, creepy gloves? It's a precious piece. So we've got these sort of really interesting formats and sort of these tip-ins with colour and then we've got some nice gatefolds and French folding there and some fold-outs. So I think, you know, this is really a really tactile piece, but they're all, I think to get accommodation, everything else is there, all the evidence, all the documentation, the workbook, the research is all really clear. I think that's another thing, is to make it really clear and logical.
Sorry, Becky, was this accommodation?
Yeah. So you'll see we're using a nice balance of display type and working typography here. And then there's a nice use of the typographic rules. And there's a little pull-out set over the explorers themselves. So yeah, this is actually shows quite nice balance of typography. You've got that sort of display type, which is nice and big and has a big impact, and then you've got, you know, this sort of really controls, quite beautiful working type. And this little tip in here, a little card. But this was actually, I think, 3 books, which I think I must have missed out that slide, but it was 3 books, and they were in this case, so they all went inside a case. And I think it's quite clever that when you open them all up at a certain page, they all sort of give a message. So I think this is important to look at when you're planning, when you're page planning. When we're page planning in the studio, we always write out a big sort of plan of all the pages and how they're going to work together. And I think the planning of your project and where the information falls, and okay, this piece of information is going to be gatefold, and this piece of information is going to be a fold out or whatever, is quite important part of your process. This one, actually I assessed this one, and this one was Molly Lawrence of Kent State University in Ohio. And this is all about Jack Kerouac. Okay, so he was like the 1950s American Beat Generation sort of poet. And she's got this really lovely typography with this hand lettering, and it sort of emulates his own hand lettering, and sort of then sort of also emulates the conflict he had with, you know, society, etc. And again, you know, I quite like the pegs. Quite cute. So again, you know, think about how everything's going to be presented too, and leave enough time to do that. So we've got our sort of, you know, really bold pieces and our sort of fairly quiet pieces. I think one thing to really think about in this project is to really sort of respect the words and sort of how can you make them sort of come to life, if you like. So you've got these nice bold pages which create this nice visual rhythm. Okay, so this one's a pass, and this one is all about the space shuttle. Okay, so this is from Danny Finlayson and Duncan of Jordanston, which is in Scotland. So this looks like it's a spiral bound piece. Quite bold use of colour. So mostly publications you'll see, but it's nice sort of infographic style happening throughout as well, and that's always a really nice, if you can extract information that can be treated in that way, in an infographic or some sort of tabular matter or charts, that's, I think, really a really exciting, dynamic thing to play with, and it's, so I think, you know, really look at your content and see how you can make it be more, communicate more effectively. And then we've got, you know, a very sort of controlled typography again. And some bright pages. So this one received a pass. Quite, you know, everything is quite controlled. This is a very good school for typography, and you can sort of, you recognise the pieces when they come through. They like to do this thing with overlaying images, type images. Okay, so Taboo. So I don't know who's doing Taboo, but this is quite a popular one as well. And there's, I'll give you a little bit of a warning first, that certain content may offend. But the term comes from the common word, meaning prohibited or forbidden. Okay, so this, and you would have read the brief on this one, but it's, oh, we've got the wrong bits and pieces on there, sorry. But you can still be ambitious with your thinking. Okay, so this one, this one is great because, you know, you just have to look at that and it just tells you. This one got a commendation from the University of West England in Bristol, and it's the Traveller's Guide to Offensive Gestures Around the World, so you sort of automatically know what this is about. And if you thought that it looked, you know, quite nice and letterpressed, that's because it was. So the whole thing was letterpressed, or quite a lot of it was actually letterpressed. They're lucky enough in Bristol to be able to have the facilities to do that. So here are some of the spreads. And what happens with these is that the pages sort of react together when you fold them. So I think some of these folding pages have a sort of dialogue. So it's quite, actually this project is quite fun and bold and loud. again, the balance, the typography, that the display type is really beautifully balanced with the working type. So you've always got that nice sort of contrast of size and colour. And you've got some French folds again. And then, yeah, this is how so the French, you can see here, this is demonstrating the type actually goes around that French fold. And I think that's probably quite hard to do, to get that N right on the edge of that page. Really nicely bound. So every detail of this book is really sort of very nicely considered. You can see here all the French folding. So yeah, some of these, really life's work really in this book. So I'd say that all these big letterpress pages, not all of it is letterpress, but some of it is. So I think that in the present, I wanted to put that in because I think part of the presentation, you can have some fun with it. So yeah, okay. Now this is about how comedians have pushed boundaries, okay, and how they have pushed taboos, and it was an interesting project. Once you open it up, it's sort of fairly. What happened with it? It had lots of pages, and you could sort of choose the pages. This one got a merit. I think because it's brave content, it's quite brave, and the research was really, really good. So yeah, this was a sort of like multiple choice. You turn the page, and so again you have this sort of really bold typography, and you have the little tip-ins here that are showing the control part of the typography. Styles happening here, but it all works together. You've got your body copy, some headings, a big heading, and then all these, different typefaces. But it's all working really, really well. But I expect that would have taken quite a long time to develop that grid and to make that all work. So as with most ISTD projects, all this content would have been gathered and either written or sort of by the students. And then you've got this really interesting pull down piece. It's quite joyous, that little page. So I think this sort of maybe it says be brave. I don't know. This piece. That's bad times. Okay, this one is a part, and this one is about civil rights and how the media is not really reporting what's going on. So I think this student wanting to have a magazine for younger people. So I think you'll see from this it's got a really, and I think this is, the typography is really nice and it is a really sort of dynamic publication, but it does rely a lot on, and the workbook for this was amazing, beautiful scrapbooks and things like that, but it relies a lot on imagery, probably more so than we'd normally like. It's got a great visual style. there should be end dashes there. So little tiny details like that will all count as well. So I think this is quite a big, they've done sort of about 32 pages of this. It's quite a big publication. Okay. Is anyone doing this one? No? We had very few of them in London actually, because I think it's quite a difficult brief, but I've got some, I do have a couple of examples to show you. So it's translating the visual into the textual, and I think as one of these people has done, they've actually used the work of a famous critic who's critiquing famous painter's artwork. So it's, I guess, finding a major artwork and how would you respond to that? This one received a merit. Outside agitators. And this is sorry, I've just lost my way. This is about activism, really. I think it's, yeah, so how protest can tell its own story. Okay. And this was the cover was a Perspex cover. It's reprinted outside agitators on top. So the assessors really like this one. Good typographic balance. So these are simple pages just tipped in, stuck down, which is quite effective. So that's sort of using, textual means to sort of, separate information. Okay, so this is Ruskin talking about Turner. So this is a pass from Jack Melrose in Northumbria. So this was just a sort of publication, and it's very classical, just because, I guess, of subject matter. But, very typographically very competent. And it's about, the painting the slave ship. Words by John Ruskin. And I think by looking at the roughs, he sort of took the paintings and laid the type on the top, so you get that sort of wash sort of effect. So he obviously liked the painting. There it is. Yeah, so that's a tricky brief, but it can be done really simply, like this. Okay, roots. So anyone doing roots? Yeah, haven't made your mind up yet. Okay. So this is all about influential texts, and this one I think would be really good to do. So you have to re-look at a historical text and think, how can it better be communicated in the present day? You can add to it perhaps with other texts, I think some people have done, and again, explore, be ambitious and creative. So this one is from the poem Dante's Inferno, okay, the Divine Comedy, and this is Ruth Niven from Duncan Jordanston, Scotland again. So there are different sections, hell, purgatory and heaven, so she's done the different sections quite to be quite dynamic and to use some of the information in a really different way. I really like the Garden of Eden, etc. So it's been, it's really thought about the content and how it can be. And we've got some more French folding going on here with sort of hidden text in the middle. So this one was a commendation because I think the breadth of the work and the research was really excellent. And also, yeah, you can use images. It's not to say you can't ever use images, but just don't rely on them sort of overly, I think. Yeah, so we've got lots of these sort of charts going on here. So she's developed a style, and then she's sort of made that content sort of fit the style, or well, she's sort of made a style for the content, I guess. Okay, this one was from Bristol again, and this is about the study of obedience by Stanley Milgram. Anyone heard of it? This apparently is the most influential psychological experiment in the world. Okay, so what this guy did, he went around with a high-vis vest on and a clipboard and tried to access areas that were restricted to see whether he could get in. He got a merit, by the way. Oh, this is, so yeah, now needless to say that the cover sort of looks like this high-vis clipboard. Again, he's sort of made the content into sort of some sort of infographic. Lists are great too. So, an example of how you can treat a list. Okay, so this is the redesigning of Sigmund Freud's The Uncanny. Okay, so this is, and it's exploring emotions through the fragmented sections of The Sandman, which is another text. So this is where two texts have sort of overlapped. So when, just going back here, so when when an assessor gets they open the folio and they get this piece, and it's sort of like Christmas, because some pieces are really lovely, like this envelope, and you want it, and then when you get it, you see this beautiful thing inside. So do think about your presentation, because all the assessors, we're just human, and we like to see something really nice. So do spend the time for that presentation section in the end. So what's happened here is that you've got all these different sort of levels of text. I think this was really, really very creative. And then what happens is the type, without the leading, the type also gets larger and larger and larger in certain parts. And so it becomes really this really confused mess of sort of words, and so it's quite effective. But it's been when you do a multi-page or different size spreads, it means that you get so many different spreads. It's really quite tricky. So it's actually quite hard to do something that has different size pages like that. And then we have fold outs as well. So it's quite beautifully planned. And some really nice typography with some nice classical ligatures there, and that S and that T in the second line, third line. And again, we've got French folds on the page. Little things like how you annotate certain things. So these are little daggers here to annotate the footnotes down at the bottom. Just little devices like that give you more hierarchy, and they also create nice elements and references. So you've got different levels of reading. Sometimes you can have them extended, so they're a bit longer than just a name. So this is, I think, where the type gets really confusing at the top in that purple section. Okay, so as I mentioned, we do, to support you guys, we here in WA, we run student workshops. So we'll have 2 weekends of concept sessions, and I'll organise that with Brendan. And we'll let you know, and we urge you to come along. They're all people who've been in your position before, whether 2, 3, 4, 5 or more years out. And then after that, so that will help you with your concept development and sort of making your concepts become a real thing. And then the crafting workshops, which will probably be in maybe September, I'd suggest. See how you go. But they will be all about the details, all right? So they're all about the sort of making sure that your typography is, is balanced and as good as it can be. Yeah, so more than that, so stay shortly. Okay, so if you want to find out more, there's the ISTD website, there's the Facebook page, and we've got Pinterest and Behance. You probably found lots of projects on Behance anyway. Yeah. Okay, any questions?
Sorry. Becky, when we look at the roots section, when people reinterpret a text, do they use the whole content of the text, or can you use only excerpt? Oh, you can use only excerpt.
Yes, yeah. Chapter. I think it says on that one you just use a chapter. Yeah. Now, with any of these, if you're using a piece of text, you don't have to do the whole book. You just have to give us a section of a wide variety of how that book would look. Yeah. Anyone else?
Are there any rules with copyrighted images if we use them in our
Because they're not for commercial use, you need to check with a particular image, but as long as you credit them somewhere in the back, it is, but it's always best to gain permission if you can. And if it's not possible, then as long as you're listing them. Yeah. Okay.
Please give
Good luck.
The imagery, some pictures, how much pictures can you use?
Yeah, the main concept behind it is typographic. So you just use images quite sparingly.
So thanks for that. Hope all the smiles have disappeared. So now it's Tina's turn just to really sort of focus on her brief. So this is exactly the same last year. They were briefed by Becky for the first time. So they didn't have a semester of concepting like you guys have enjoyed. So Tina was able to achieve in half the time what hopefully you can achieve, and scored a merit for her assignment. So I'll let her there is a sample up here of an untorn work as well, so you're welcome to touch the real thing after she's spoken. So please make her feel welcome.
Hey guys, thanks Centra and Brendan for inviting me back to give you guys a perspective on university as well as ISTD, and thank you Becky for introducing ISTD and showing us some of the stuff from London. Okay, so I'll start with university from my perspective. I'm an international student, and initially the only reason I went to university was for immigration, and that has dramatically changed now. So I'm loving being there, and I'm learning lots, although it's not quite what people expected from the get-go. Okay, so I'm going to show you my first 5 weeks of emotions. This was week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and week 5. Okay, so when you go to university, you hopefully will come out with a degree, which is an internationally recognised qualification, which will take you from small town Perth to essentially anywhere in the world. Advanced diplomas are something that American students come out of college or high school with, so people don't quite understand essentially what goes into it. So obviously you will need your portfolio as well, but the higher education is definitely beneficial. Okay, so university for me is that kind of in-between level between being here at TAFE and the step into industry. So university provides a broad choice of electives, which enables me to be more specific with what I want to design and the way I want to design. It also allows you to problem solve and individually learn. So there is a huge amount of independent learning, and kind of you are just fed the information and then you have to go out and deal with it, which is quite similar to industry. Once you get the brief, you then have to go and answer the questions. At TAFE, you get a little bit more feedback and direction. Who has watched Shark Tank? Anyone? Okay. I've recently started watching this program, and all I can think is university for it, purely because when you go to university, you have to do public presentations pretty much every week, especially in the graphic design class, whether it's a work in progress or whether it's a pitch to the client. So those first 5 minutes of this program where they come in, they speak to the dragons or the judges and try and make them give them money, it's really selling their whole idea, which as a designer you can do the work, but if you can't sell it and if you can't give a decent rationale behind your work, you're not going to have as much of an argument or a case and persuade them as much to choose your work over potentially someone else on 99 designs. Okay, so I'm going to show you quickly 1 week of work at university. I'll skip through it because it's a bit. So you start with the brief. You have to rewrite essentially what you are going to do. And then you obviously do the research. They are really keen on analysing your research. They're not just saying, you know, what colours it uses, saying why it answers the target audience and all sorts. And then obviously maybe the direction that you want to go down and so on. So I'll just skip through. Inspiration, initial ideas, bad drawings, never mind. Different experimenting with typefaces, seeing what works. Development, more development. So this is all in 1 week. So when you get told what you can do as the brief, you then get 1 week to bring something like this to your lecturer and present to the class for ongoing feedback. So kind of your work in progress. Which was one of the reasons why my first reaction during the graphic design class was completely overwhelmed, because I'm like, how do I do that work and 4 other units worth of work in 1 week? But you get there. Okay. One more thing about university. Deadlines are real. You can't push it. The only way you can get an extension is by having a council letter or counselling letter, or being a doctor's certificate. And they're really strict, so if you're ill for 2 days, that's the only extension you get. You don't get an extension of a week because you were lagging. Like, it's literally the days that you miss, which is really hard work, but they're kind of okay about it. You get penalised if you don't hand in your work in time. For graphic design, you get penalised if you don't turn up to a work in progress. And each penalty is pretty much 10 marks. So if you don't turn up to 3 things, you've lost 30% straight away. If you hand in your work late, like I did 2 weeks ago, you get deducted instantly. So I missed putting in my presentation folder 2 hours before class, which was 7 AM in the morning. I was really prepared for my presentation and I just forgot to submit it and I got deducted straight away, and it's just a massive kick in the teeth. So they are real, which is really good for going into industry, because you can't keep putting off seeing that client if you haven't done the work, and they're not going to come back to you if you constantly want extensions or don't provide good work in the time period that they give you. So why go through another year of study? You can treat it like it's your master's, so you can really hone in on what you want to specialise in. They offer 2 electives in the first semester and then 2 in the second semester. And you can, especially in graphic design, you can do anything. So you can go to screen printing, you go publication design, you could study law if you wanted to, or they really leave it open. So you've got 2 core units in each semester, and then the other 2 are whatever you want, which I think is really good. It also makes you find out potentially what you don't like. So I thought I really liked advertising here at TAFE. Get to university, I don't like it, it's not for me. So by doing the elective there, it's shown me that, it's not an avenue that I want to explore, and I'll choose a different elective next semester. The briefs are open in the sense that you get certain parameters. It's a little bit like ISTD, that you get the brief, but then you can do essentially whatever you want within that brief. So it's really good for developing your style, but at the same time, you've got to expand upon that, because if you only have your style throughout your whole portfolio, it's going to be a little bit limiting as such. So the approach that I've taken is do 2 that I really want to portray as me, and then the other 2, you either approach industry for briefs, competition briefs, or freelance and get paid to study, which is also pretty good. The briefs you get 4 weeks from beginning to end. So you get the brief, then you have 2 work in progress and you present, and then you get the second brief. So there'll be an overlap of when you hand in your workbook, which is in that final week, and when you're starting a new week or a new project as well. This really focuses on your time management, and you get deducted if you don't do it like I have. So it's really good again for industry as well. And it's a really good skill to have, because you can set yourself a bar and then you can always kind of match it. And this massively goes on to ISTD as well. Another benefit of going to university is that you get graded. Some people don't like it. I personally love it, because it allows me to set a bar in my work, and if I don't quite reach where I want to, then I'll push myself even harder. Whereas when you get essentially a pass or a fail, or competent, non-competent, you don't really know where you're sitting and you don't know how to improve, essentially. So it's really good for that, but some people don't enjoy it as much because they don't get the confidence that I get from it. Another thing that they really mark you on, similar to ISTD again, is your workbook, so how you come up with the ideas and all the development and everything. Because they strongly believe it gives you better grades and better designs, which from going to university as well, I can massively relate to. Okay, whilst going to uni, it's really, obviously, there is quite a kind of characteristics of drinking and having a social life and everything. It's not quite like that. Every Thursday you can go to the tavern, have a pint and a pizza, with your mates, but it's good to have your friends around you, and it's good to make new friends. That's what university also offers you, especially when you're doing an elective that you don't necessarily haven't done before, you don't know anyone in it, you meet so many people and you get new inspiration and competition, I guess, because they're the people that are coming out of uni at the same time as you, so it's like you guys competing for those jobs out there. So what options do you have when you leave TAFE? You can freelance, you can work in a studio, an agency, a firm, so in-house, being the graphic designer, internships, or uni. So, were there 60 people in our, how many people in our year last year? That's quite big.
Yeah, it's 52.
52, okay. Well, I've said it was 60, but
Yeah.
essentially 7 or 8 people have a job out of the 52 of us that kind of put ourselves out there. 14 originally went to uni, and that dropped down to 12 due to people finding it's not for them, or the commitment's too much, or they've got other things going on, or they get a job, which is really good. So it's important to look at all your options. Perth isn't a huge place for finding jobs, as a lot of us who graduated last year are finding. So yeah, just try and put yourself out there. Use AGDA mentorship program, which will be happening hopefully at some point. It's a really good networking exercise and opportunity. So the pros for uni is independent and self-learning. Critiquing your work, and this is what I was talking to Mark earlier about, that sometimes when you look at your work for so long, you have to still see the errors in it, and sometimes that's slow, and therefore your attention to detail can lack a little bit. University does develop creative and design thinking. You can take your technical skills that you've learnt here for the last 3 or 4 years and speed them up, and that's essentially what uni is, that you have to do the same amount of work, or if not more, in 4 weeks at uni rather than maybe 8 to 10 here. So you really kind of just take your skill set and you speed it up, which is a good step to industry as well. You have to rationalise everything, so you have to design with meaning and with the correct kind of, you're meeting the target audience and everything, and that comes down to your presentation and pitch as well. So if you can't sell your work, even if it's not very good essentially, but if you can't sell it, you're never going to get the work or the client that you want. You can get paid to study, which is when you freelance for projects, which is brilliant. You're able to find your niche. You can really hone in on your skills, your strengths, and develop. And also you get the international qualification. So the cons, another year of study, but it's actually 28 weeks and that's it. The rest is holiday, which is pretty good. You have to seek your own feedback. In the graphic design unit, you get 5 minutes of feedback. That's from the classmates and your lecturer, and that's it. You don't get any more in class time. You don't get anyone kind of peering over your shoulder, have you tried this, have you tried that? You don't get it. But you have to, obviously, well, we use Facebook and just send our concepts to each other and say, what do you reckon to this? What about this logo? And that's the way we feedback to each other, but you have to go and arrange to see the lecturers if you want more feedback. And even then, it can be a little bit limiting. It's a huge financial commitment. There are ways around that though, and I definitely think it's worth it if you do want to go abroad with your designs. The 2 core units in the first year is academic professional communication and visual communication. There are essays involved and there is a lot of research involved. The university won't kind of not allow us to do it. We all tried this year to argue against it, and it's just their rules. So you have to do it, but if you put the work in, you can easily pass. So it's just, you get out what you put in essentially. Obviously the penalties, you can lose marks easily, but you can also gain some. It's a hugely different learning environment by not getting feedback. You're on your own, you're on your laptop, you don't have a nice studio to kind of work in for every design class. and it's a huge campus. Like, you're wandering around as a nobody, essentially, whereas here you're kind of like a little family, which is kind of nice. So the cons, the two at the bottom are cons and pros at the same time, because by self-learning and problem-solving yourself, you are developing your skills and great ways to kind of put yourself out there in the industry. And also you learn to present. I would not be here if I hadn't have done the first year at uni, because public speaking is not my theme, and I genuinely don't think I'd be able to do this if I hadn't have had to do them every week at uni. So, moving on to ISTD. For me, it was by far the best project to TAFE. It kind of took my designs from here to here, and it took my confidence even further. So, love it. Just fully immerse yourself in it, and the rewards are beneficial. So ISTD, obviously you focus on typography, layouts, grid, publication design. It's your first real publication design, or maybe app design that you do at uni, TAFE. So you can kind of do what you want with it. It's also your first proper print job. Like, if you submit, you have to get it professionally printed. And that is a huge learning curve in terms of, well, time management, knowing what you can and can't do, knowing that you've got to discuss with the printers what they can do, and if they can't do what you want, then you have to go and find a different printer, which all takes time. What I really loved about my concept and everything was I was able to make my design come to life. So by using perforations, by using the spiral bound, by using French folds and things, you can really kind of, and the type as well, you can make it speak essentially, so you don't have to read the word, you just kind of see it in its own element. And also you can take everything that you learn from doing the ISTD project into every avenue of your design and your life, which I think is very beneficial. It really helps going to university as well after doing ISTD, because it's kind of that hint of what you're going to have to do at uni. Your topic or the brief that you choose, be passionate about it. It's the number one thing, or the number one bit of advice that I can give you, because you need to stay motivated and you need to stay connected with it to get the best outcome. And you need to enjoy it. Don't pick something that you think is the easier brief or the harder brief because you want to challenge yourself, or you feel like you've got an answer for it. You just have to enjoy it. It does get a little bit boring. I did with mine. I was really bored. So you have to research it, you have to love it, and fully immerse yourself in it. The workshops, they are an invaluable bit of experience, and they provide so much help. It's unreal. I talked to Becky my first concept, pretty much went in the bin after. So I had a huge transformation from start to finish, and just as well I went, because I don't think I would have submitted if I hadn't have gone to the workshops. It's a great way to network, whether it's just because you go to the first one or all of them, but you see people's faces, then you go to AGDA talks, and it's just great to kind of talk to people about your project or what they did or anything like that. I asked people last year who didn't submit to ISTD or didn't go to the networking or workshop zone, and it's because they were a bit shy, or they didn't have the work in time to go. Don't be shy. It's not as scary as you think going into the studio and showing people your work. They love it, they want to help you, and at the end of the day, you come out feeling so much more confident than when you go in, even if you go in with crap, like I did. Okay, so when you're doing your research, you should have so many different ideas about the actual design coming into your head. So make sure you write them down. Your ideation process should be pretty big. Lots of mind mapping, lots of kind of talking to your friends and pitching ideas to them, your lecturers as well. So explore lots of different ideas and constantly take notes, or if you think you've got this one idea, see if there's something else in your research that you can relate back to it and make it even stronger. Probably the biggest idea that came of my book was the perforations, and that comes from learning about the nerves and the deterioration of it. And once they're broken, you can't repair them, so you can't put back to a perforated piece of paper. So that's what drove my design, essentially. You can't take any shortcuts with the process. You have to go through it, you have to explore the ideas, and you have to do in-depth analysis of essentially the research and your design process. It's the same as uni as well. And you will come out with a better design because of it. Fatigue. I swear it was like the only kind of feeling that I had the whole time doing the project, because you put in so many hours, you've got long nights, you get bored of the same project, you're looking at the same idea for hours and you're like, why is it not working, and all this kind of thing. So you will feel tired, but that's the wrong one, sorry, I'll go back to that. The hours that you spend, the days, the weeks and the months that you put into this project will change your outlook on design and your skills for the rest of your life and years to come in the industry. So it really does teach you very beneficial and critical or crucial typography skills, layout skills, and how to actually use a grid, because I didn't know how to use a grid before I did ISTD, so that was a huge learning curve. I know Becky showed you some amazing ideas of how to create this book or artifact, whatever you want to do, but simple works as well. So if you can just beautifully typeset or illustrate your typography and what your book or app is essentially saying, then that's brilliant. Okay, 80% is the commendation mark, but you can't give 80% in order to get it. You have to give 100%, which means making sacrifices and fully committing to it. So many people regret not submitting to ISTD or not putting in the effort, and when you spend so long on a project, which you have to do anyway to pass because it's part of your unit, you may as well do it to the potential that you can submit, and you never know what you're going to get, and it's very, very rewarding just to pass. It's brilliant. And you also get the international recognition, which is the qualification essentially that Becky was referring to. One hot tip: save your work regularly and on different devices. Poor Jodie rocked up on the day of submission with her workbook on her hard drive. Her hard drive had corrupted between when she left home and got to TAFE, and luckily had saved it that morning to her home computer. Went back home, got it, printed it off. Please save your work on lots of different places. So that's really important. Make sure you take regular breaks. It's hard when you've got so much work to do, but when you step away from it for a little while, go and get a coffee, go and chat to your mum, dad, whatever, you'll be beneficial for it. And it's better for your health as well, because being a designer, you sit down all day, it's not very good for you. Okay, so this is the kind of commitment and the sacrifices that you had to make. Fun is first to go. I don't think I saw my friends for weeks, especially coming up to the deadline. They couldn't quite understand why one project completely dominated my life, but it did, and it's rewarding. So, fun is first to go, but it definitely pays off when you submit even just a beautiful portfolio piece. And at grad show as well, people love to go to the ISTD section because it's your own element, your own little kind of showcase, and it is really good. You can go over and talk to them. I'm going to reinforce printing So the way that I did it, I found a printer, I went and spoke to them. I had so many different ideas that I took to them. Mine was really complex to start with, and me and the printer could not work it out how to happen, so I had to then strip it right back. But if I hadn't have gone to the printer in the first place, weeks in advance of coming up with my final idea, it just wouldn't have worked, because they essentially tell you in a way what you can and can't do as well, what paper stock you can use. If they can't use the paper that you want, then you have to try and find somewhere else as well. Make sure you do loads of mock-ups of your final outcome, because you'll soon find glitches with them. And I found that when I received mine back, the front cover was pretty much ripped because the perforation wasn't exactly 100%. So that's just a little note to self next time. Make sure I've got a proper mock-up that I've tested and completely destroyed essentially and found all the faults with it. ISTD submission here is pretty much in the bang middle of annual report season, and the printers are under the pump. And especially when, like, imagine if all you guys wanted to submit and you're all going to 1 or 2 printers in Perth, you've got to allow like 2 or 3 weeks for your stuff to get done. A lot of us picked up our finals on the day of submission because that's how much they were under the pump. And the other thing is, get loads of feedback on your design, whether that's from industry, your lecturers, other lecturers who don't even teach this unit. I think I pestered Mark like there was no tomorrow for more feedback. He helped me come up with the concept. We sat in one class for about 30 minutes just trying to work out, ripping up bits of paper to make it work, and it just wouldn't. It's frustrating, but the feedback helps as well. Parents, classmates, and industry, especially if you get into the mentorship program. This deadline is your first real experience of a deadline. Are you flying over again? You don't know? Probably? Okay. Unless you want to meet Brendan at the airport, that's as close as it gets to kind of missing the deadline. So don't do all that hard work and then not be able to come up with the goods at the end. So what you'll get out of ISTD and if you go to uni, so they are essentially both what you make of it, and you'll become better designers and ready for the industry after graduation with both. And you have to really step out of your comfort zone and into new learning environments, and you do get a reward for the risks that you take. So you can develop creative and design processes, design to your strengths, learn vital typography, printing experience, time management, and for me it really is step 2 in the prep for going into the big bad world of design. Learn, have fun, and kick ass. That's it.
Say you put your heart and soul into something and you put all your time into it, and in the end you get less than that 60%. Any tips to keep going, or like motivation tips that you're not going to give up on?
Definitely. When Brendan came back with the results, I was crying before he told anyone because I thought I'd failed, and it is really heartbreaking. I think the best bit of advice that I can give you is, if you put all that work and effort into it, okay, it might not hit the bar with these guys, but that's a standout piece for going into the industry. And at the end of the day, it's going to be something that you are going to love and cherish. Yeah. And it's a great design. So if you don't quite make it, it's not bad because there are so many knock-ons from it anyway. Who's interested in going to uni here?
Half-hearted.
Yeah. There are a few people that went to uni this year who almost wish that they didn't, just because they haven't found it as useful for them, or they want to be a bit more unique with their design styles. And essentially, everyone just wants to get out and work and earn some money, but uni for me definitely is, I'm getting out of it what I'm putting in. So I've sought opportunities to do stuff with industry in uni, so it's getting more experience and stuff as well. And it is a really good way to network because a lot of the lecturers at uni are in the industry. So you're getting connections all the time and you're making new friends and being inspired by their design styles and stuff as well. So it's really good.
How many assignments do you usually have at one time?
At uni?
Yeah.
So you have 4 units. A lot of them kind of overlap. So one week you may have 5, one week you may have 4, one week you may have 1, because they all kind of stagger themselves. But there is end of semester crunch time where everything seems to be due. So yeah, you can have maybe 5 projects due in once.
So I'd like to thank Tina and Becky for sharing this afternoon with us, and just keep in mind Tina's got assignments due like you do this week. It's the final week for this semester, so please thank them again for and if you've got any questions, we can get in touch via Mark or myself, and Becky will announce concepting workshops and crafting workshops coming up as well. So after your break, it all starts happening. So thanks again. Thanks to the diplomas for sharing today as well.